So all the work that you do seems to be a passion project for you.
Yep.
Is this the most personal project that you've ever done?
I think with every bit of work that I do, it's always personal. I mean, for any person, you can't really separate what you're working on from your experiences, from what's inspiring you at the moment, from what you're thinking that you'll do next. Like, everything you do is like a snapshot of who you are at that very minute. So every one of these guitars, these instruments, it's always a work of kind of personal passion to make it happen. Otherwise, you might as well hang it up. You know, nothing good is going to come from just phoning it in. You know, so a guitar like this, yeah, I'm very passionate about the kinds of influences that went into this guitar, about the work that's been done to be able to produce it, to design it, to build it, and to play it. It's a wonderful thing.
Can you tell me more about the timeline and the relationship between this design and the V-Class racing?
Yeah, the timing of this guitar is interesting because at the right after we launched the 800 series back in early 2014, I was thinking about, okay, well, what do we do next? And we had just built like the most Taylor of Taylor guitars, right? We took our iconic guitar, and so I had this idea about building instruments using this V-Class architecture, and this was actually the guitar I first had in mind with it. So I built one using a real conventional kind of dreadnought shape. That really lit me up and got me thinking. Built another one, went, well, okay, well, this isn't a fluke. There's something here. Let me make a shape that will help kind of do what I want this to do. Because what I was trying to get is a little more independent control of how the guitar would sound. Typically, when we're using like an X-brace architecture inside the guitar, you can make some changes and you can voice it the way you want, but it's almost always a balancing act where if you add something in one place, you're taking it away from something else. If you add a little more volume, you're taking away a little more sustain. If you're adding a little, and it's kind of this push and pull. And the V idea allowed us to get a lot more independent control over those aspects of the instrument sound. So we could have more sustain, we could have better balance, we could have more volume and projection. But what's fascinating to me is it gives us a huge amount of control over what the guitar feels like, what it sounds like, what the personality of the instrument is, by even just making tiny little changes. And so this guitar, it's definitely a different sound for Taylor guitars. It's not the real modern, vibrant character that you've come to know and that I love very much. But this is a sound I love as well. So it's a real interesting thing.
Was there any apprehension either from you or around you about the guitar? Because obviously it changes the perception of Taylor.
You know, when I first built this guitar a couple of years ago, there was some apprehension about, well, what is this thing? It's not just a new bracing system inside a guitar. It's not just a new flavor. It's like an entirely different thing than what we're known for. You know, it was pretty far removed from who we are and what we've done and the kind of instruments we make. And so I thought about it and went, okay, maybe I've been spending a little too much time in the workshop, you know. I might need to go back and drop a few breadcrumbs along the way. So I took the V idea and adapted it, kind of reflavored it into a very familiar, you know, modern Taylor way, a very familiar kind of sound and personality. So the guitars that we introduced this last year, the Grand Auditoriums and the Builder's Edition guitars, those are a very Taylor familiar sound. It's a very modern sound, very vibrant, real a lively and precise and clean, articulated sound. And so now we get to expand the sort of instruments that we're building and build these different characters. In this case, a very kind of warm and mature sort of personality.
There's going to be some debate over whether it's a dreadnought or not. Are you going to stay out of that at all?
Yeah, I'm sure people are going to debate whether it is or is not a dreadnought. And honestly, I've had that debate with myself time and time again over the last couple of years, because the first version I've built with this, it was based around a pretty conventional dreadnought. Second one was based around a pretty conventional dreadnought. The third one went, okay, enough with that. That's not going to get me where I want to go, but I like the direction. Let me make something else that will do what I want. So I don't know if it's a dreadnought. It's about the right dimensions as a dreadnought. The curves don't look very dreadnought-ish. It's kind of a sloped shoulder, kind of a round shoulder. I like to call it a guitar, personally.
The three iterations at the moment, they really do offer very distinct experiences for the player. How are you able to kind of describe the character?
Well, we're building three different versions of this guitar, because each of these different woods does offer a very different personality. Now, this one's a 517 Builder's Edition guitar, so it's roasted spruce with Honduran mahogany on the back and sides. That has a very unique characteristic. Trying to use words to describe sounds is something I struggle with, so I don't know if there's any really good way to do it, but this one has this a warm and dry, kind of fundamental strong sound, where like the note you play is the note you get. You know, it's a very clear but approachable flavor. We're building a rosewood version. Well, the rosewood one has a lot more harmonic content for each note. So it's a very rich, kind of lavish sort of sound. And we're building a 317 as well, using sapelli on the back and sides with a spruce top. And in some ways, that's almost like a mix between the two. You know, it's a very clear but broad ranging kind of sound. It's a real like general purpose sort of a sound. So those three personalities, they're instruments that are all good in their own way, but they do have distinctly different voices.
Now, we're in the songwriting capital of the world, and when I think songwriting guitars, I think D28, J45. Do you see this guitar as amongst that lineage and very much a songwriter's friend?
Yeah, in so many ways, I do look at this guitar as something that would serve a songwriter very well, especially one of the mahogany flavors. It's pardon the pun, but it's tailor-made to fit as an accompanist role. It's got that clear, dry, focused thing that allows you to sing over it easily. And at the same time, I mean, you could play jazz on it, you could play bluegrass with it, you can play Celtic music, you could front a rock band. It's this real wide-ranging, versatile instrument that kind of no matter what you're playing, it sounds good. So yeah, I look at these as great songwriting tools, but they're equally great instrumentalist tools.
It was wonderful to see you as a musician yesterday, and you have a great knowledge of stringed instruments as well as the guitar, and also you play those instruments. How does that context and knowledge of things outside the guitar influence your work in guitar design, especially on this model?
Well, I'm pretty familiar with the way instruments have been made and the way they work, their history behind them, and both as a maker and a player, that influences what we choose to do. It influences how we work. It influences how we see a design fitting into the lineage of a musician's needs. Because the relationship between builders and players is a two-way street, as I see it. You know, players are always asking for something that inspires them. It gives them new capability. It expands their dynamic range, allows them to do something they haven't done. I mean, essentially we're in the business of offering creativity to a musician. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And so when builders can make something that does that and then a little more, and what we get in return is all kinds of fresh new music. And that's what keeps kind of this musical lineage of creative storytelling alive. We get to tell stories, share songs, make new sounds, write new songs, perform in new ways. That's really exciting. And so to that end, I'm always trying to bring in what I can learn from pianos, violins, mandolins, because I know that this guitar will not live kind of on an island. It's going to be played in the context of a band, in a writer's round, in a studio, on a stage. There's going to be other instruments around. So it has to fit with those as well as hold its own and offer something new and fresh.
The neck design was really interesting. I've never really had that experience with a guitar that I just picked up before. It felt familiar very, very quickly. What was the process like of the neck design? Did it come together quite quickly, or did you have to kind of get other players' impressions of it?
The neck design is something I snuck up on it over the process of years, because I've watched a lot of players pick up an instrument, and the way they hold it, the way they'll try it out, the way that they start settling in with it is different from person to person, but a few things are common. Like in most cases, when a player has their hand down here, they tend to wrap their thumb around farther. There's a different way we form chords and play down here. It's just as an extension of your wrist in your hand position. By the time you come up here on the neck, your hand isn't in the same spot. Your thumb isn't wrapping around the neck anymore, it's in the middle. And so I've noticed that folks who like a V-ish shaped neck, they tend to play down here a lot. And folks who play up here quite a bit don't like V-shaped necks. It's because the V is weird it's really strange to put your thumb right against it. So this neck, it's shaped so that it more naturally follows how your hand moves. So it's actually a variable profile. It's like the most subtle V that you could ever make over here. It's almost not a V. It's just a little suggestion. And then by the time you move up here, it's a lot rounder and it fits your thumb position real well. So that it just immediately feels intuitive. By the time we add in the rolled over fingerboard edge that feels like it's kind of been played on for a long time, maybe even refretted once or twice, it makes this neck that it just feels familiar. It feels comfortable. It takes almost no getting used to.
What ambitions are left for you? Because you've had a really significant few years at Taylor. In terms of design are there things that you still want to achieve?
Yeah, as a builder, this is a really exciting time to be making guitars, because the next 5 years and then some they're going to be exciting times. Starting with the launch of the V-Class idea last year and continuing with this, it feels like pulling the cork out of a bottle, where all kinds of stuff gets to follow in the wake of this. Now that we're able and kind of invested in doing this, there's a whole bunch of really interesting instruments coming. So next couple of years are going to be really exciting.
What I think's really interesting about the things like the academy models is that and these models is you're very consciously reaching out to players that might not be aware of Taylor or might not have considered them in the past. Is that kind of accessibility a very important thing for you?
Yeah, I really believe that music is way too important to leave up to the professionals. So one of my interests is encouraging even just recreational or amateur beginning players to pick up the instrument and express themselves. I want them to enjoy the music making process. And so using our Academy series as an example, that's a guitar that's meant to encourage somebody to pick the thing up for the first time or the 100th time, even if they have limited means, and make some music. It has to sound good, it has to play good, it has to offer a lot of creative expression. But that's a wonderful and noble thing. It's a good way to tell your story. And so even with these guitars, I made a deliberate choice to not make them overly lavish, too much embellishment or anything. It's a musical instrument first and foremost. It has to sound good, it has to feel good. I want it to be beautiful, of course, but not at the expense of excluding folks.